Imagine working for an organisation for decades and never being paid, never asking to be paid. But then all of a sudden the workload becomes so much that you do ask. Well, that's the situation for volunteers for St John's in Te Anau. They said the workload was simply too great. Now, St John's said, look, we can sort this out. We'll hire a worker to come in and help out. But that has just led to the most senior, lifelong members there walking out in disgust. They say bringing in one worker to help out is not going to reduce the hours they're forced to do. In any case, they want to be compensated for some of their call-outs. St John's response is, look, if we do this down there, it sets a precedent for the rest of the country. So hi, Tiffin, with the emergency in Te Anau.
Fiordland. It's rugged country, isolated, unpredictable. Have an accident here and the first to care is likely to be Te Anau's tight-knit team of St John volunteers.
We'll land on a place like this where we can land, put the long strop on and the basket, and then they'll fly us down and lower us through the bush.
But it won't be Stuart Burnby on the end of a winch saving lives anymore. After 14 years of volunteer work, this paramedic has handed in his resignation. He says St John doesn't care about the volunteers or their community.
And St John's don't give a two hoots about it, really. Well, they don't. No, they just says, fine, bye, go.
If he could leave his pharmacy, George Batchelor would be a volunteer. Instead, he's trying to get them recognition.
The lives of everybody that travels to and fro down the Milford Road in the summer, those lives are in the hands of 16 volunteers and they should be valued.
The problem, the increasing workload on volunteers here. In the last 8 years, they say call-outs have doubled. This is the furthest St John base from a hospital. An ambulance trip can be about 6 hours, often more, if it's had to travel on that Milford Road.
During the summer, a very huge amount of time away from the work. Being a sole operator, it has certainly crippled my lifestyle a lot, and, you know, financially.
St John's answer? To put in a paid officer to help take the load off. It's worked elsewhere, but Te Anau volunteers say it won't work here. At this time of year, Te Anau, population 3,500, is pretty quiet. They might have one ambulance call-out in a week. But come summer, when the tourists flock in, the trampers hit those great walks, that's when you can have 3 emergency call-outs in a day.
One paid officer, like at the moment, he's sitting there getting paid to do nothing. Where's the fairness in that? And if the call-out happens, if those 2 call-outs had happened when he was off duty, the volunteers are still doing the work. It's very little difference. It would take very little workload off.
What the volunteers are asking for is to be paid when they're called out. They're on road time. They've worked out the total cost to St John would be around half as much as the salary of one full-time ambulance officer.
You're requesting to be paid for about 5% of the time that you commit, and that time that you commit exceeds 2,000 hours per volunteer. They don't appear greedy to my mind.
We've got 2,300 ambulance volunteers around the country, many of them doing unbelievable hours serving their communities, and we could not afford to pay all of our volunteers. You know, at a low rate of pay, that would equate to some $50 million a year.
What St John has offered is to reimburse proven lost wages, up to $115 a day. The volunteers say it won't help those only allowed to volunteer on days off, and they want to be paid equally.
Well, then they wouldn't be volunteers. That's the fundamental around volunteerism.
Those who work closely with the paramedics say it's not good enough. They say St John's should have been paying out some of what the organisation receives for the services of the volunteers.
That money that's going from ACC to St John's for the volunteers is $292 for a single crew, $480 for a double crew each time they do a mission. So that money there, over the 98 missions we've done for the year, averages out about what we're asking to cover the on-road time.
These the only St John paramedics in the country doing voluntary work on helicopters. Now pilots worry about who they'll be taking on their next emergency.
Each aircraft's different. A BK117 to a squirrel operation is entirely different, so you can't just go and dump someone on us and expect us to work safely with them.
Head into town and you can see the sort of money this small community's raised for what it cares about.
We are in my opinion, a model that should be upheld and valued, not dismantled, not destabilised.
You do have a bit of a wheeze, actually.
With just one busy rural practice in the town, Steve Graham relies on Te Anau's volunteers. They've never let him down.
I can't see how we can afford to lose these people to the service.
But lose them they have. 2 or 3 paid officers from out of town are looking after the ambulance station until St John appoints the new paid officer. Te Anau's most experienced ambulance officers and paramedic volunteers have left.
Te Anau does have cover. I'd like to reassure anybody that is worried that should there be an accident, there is cover. Should there be 2 accidents, there probably is cover. Should there be 3 accidents, which does happen, particularly in the summer months, cover will not be anything like as comprehensive as it has been in the past.
An offer by St John's to pay Stuart for his helicopter work couldn't change his mind. He says that wouldn't be fair on the others. These are long-standing, dedicated volunteers. If the big one went down, there's little doubt they'd help. But they say they had to make a stand.
Give them a good wash and give them back to them.
We'd reached what we thought was a good conclusion, that we put in a full-time paid ambulance officer, which of course is something that most communities would absolutely celebrate.
First to care?
I don't think so. First to care for St John's, first to care for the organisation, not first to care for the communities that they represent.